A young man, falsely imprisoned by his jealous friend, escapes and uses a hidden treasure to exact his revenge. Movie opens in the year 1814 as a ship sends a lifeboat to Elba Island where the British are holding Napoleon under heavy guard. Edmond Dantes, a young French sailor, and his friend Fernand Mondego are diverted to Elba when their captain falls ill with brain fever. On the island, they have a perilous encounter with the guards, but are aided unexpectedly by Napoleon's personal physician. In exchange for the doctor's services, Napoleon tasks Edmond with delivering a secret letter to his supporters in Marseille. However, Edmond is unaware of the letter's contents, which provide instructions for a possible rescue. Meanwhile, Fernand discovers and reads the letter, gaining full knowledge of its contents. Following his return to France, Morle appoints Edmond as captain of one of his ships, causing Danglars, the ship's second-in-command who opposed their landing, to become enraged. Edmond's improved social standing leads him to propose to his beloved, Mercedes Iguanata, whom Fernand unsuccessfully attempts to court out of envy for Edmond's happiness. After sharing his good fortune, Fernand departs in a dazed state, leaving Dante and Mercedes to agree to marry with a simple string in lieu of a wedding ring. Fernand, saddened by his friend's success and contentment, becomes intoxicated and divulges the contents of the letter to Danglars, which would incriminate him for participating in a traitorous act according to French laws. The local authorities seize Edmond and bring him before the magistrate, Villefort. Despite acknowledging Edmond's innocence of the sedition charge, Villefort becomes troubled upon discovering that the letter was intended for Mr. Clarion, who is, in fact, Villefort's own father, Noirtier Villefort, a vocal Bonapartiste and a politically inconvenient parent for a young man aspiring to a successful career in law and politics in post-Napoleonic France. In an effort to eliminate any evidence linking his father to Napoleon's escape plans from Elba, Villefort burns the letter and has Edmond arrested and sent to the Château d'If, a maximum security prison where he endures more than a decade of imprisonment under the cruel warden. Edmond has been arrested for treason and seeks help from Fernand. He reveals that he had received a letter from Napoleon on Elba, but it turned out to be for one of his agents, and he was unaware of this fact. Fernand had been aware of the letter, but he did not tell Edmond as it was Danglars' idea. Edmond is frustrated and hurt that Fernand did not come to him first and feels betrayed. However, their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of gendarmes. Fernand hesitates to help Edmond and reveals his jealousy and resentment towards calling him the son of a clerk. When they were taking away Edmond, Fernand throws a piece of chess to Edmond to make him understand he is just a pawn. The son, who is the chief magistrate, warns his father that he cannot afford to have him mixed up in such activities as he is an official of the new regime. The father believes that he is a patriot and the son is a traitor, and mentions that treason is a matter of dates. However, the son tells his father that Napoleon Bonaparte is no longer the emperor of anything and urges him to stop his lunacy or risk being arrested and ruining their family's reputation. The daughter, Valentina, intervenes and reminds them that their fates are intertwined as a family. The warden of Château d'If, Dantes, claims to be innocent, but the warden doesn't seem to believe him. He tells Dantes that if he were truly guilty, he would be in a different prison. They then proceed to inspect Dantes' quarters. Dantes mentions that he believes God will give him justice, and the warden comments on how people try to motivate themselves in different ways, but often lose interest or die. The warden of Château d'If showing Edmond Dantes to his cell, where he tells him about the tradition of hurting prisoners on the anniversary of their imprisonment. Later, news arrives that Napoleon has escaped from Elba, causing chaos. Fernand Mondego arrives to plead for Edmond's innocence in a treason charge, but the prosecutor claims that Edmond is also charged with murder. Edmond's friends and family plead for mercy and proof of his guilt. Prosecutor is telling Mercedes and her friends that Edmond Dantes has been handed over to the king's men, and they should forget about him. Mercedes pleads for mercy and asks for proof of his treason, but the person refuses to give any information. While imprisoned, Edmond becomes friends with a fellow inmate named Abbe Faria, who is a highly knowledgeable scholar that gradually shapes Edmond into a wise and cultured man by offering to teach him in exchange for help in tunneling out of the prison. Faria confesses that he was once a soldier who burned down a church, killing a group of rebels, which he deeply regrets. He turned to religion to atone for his sins and became a priest. During his time as a soldier, Faria was responsible for the vast fortune of Caesar Spada. Believing that Faria knew the whereabouts of the wealth, Napoleon had him arrested and imprisoned until he confessed, although Faria remained unaware of the location of Spada's riches. After figuring out how Fernand and the others betrayed him, Edmond persuades Faria to teach him the art of sword fighting and other combat skills. Edmond and Faria are digging one day when there is a cave-in that fatally injures Faria. Faria reveals that he lied about not knowing the location of the treasure and gives Dante a map to where it is buried. Before dying, he begs Edmond to follow the teachings of God and to abandon his crusade for vengeance. Edmond secretly places himself in Faria's burial sack, which is to be thrown over the cliffs and into the ocean alongside the prison. While being thrown, Edmond attempts to grab the keys from Dorléac, but they are both tossed into the sea, where Edmond kills him and leaves his body in the ocean before swimming away. Edmund washes up on a shore far from the Shadow Diff and discovers it has been inhabited by smugglers and pirates. Luigi Vampa, the head of the group, offers Edmund the chance to save his life if he wins a knife fight with Jacopo for the entertainment of the crew. Edmund wins but spares Jacopo, convincing Vampa that both of their talents can be put to good use. Jacopo pledges his life to Edmund for sparing him. Years later, the group returns to Marseille where Edmund and Jacopo decide to leave together to seek their own fortunes. Edmund reunites with Morel years later, but chooses to conceal his true identity and remains silent. Morel informs him that his shipping company was acquired by Danglars, who is now a baron. Edmund's father committed suicide following his imprisonment. Villefort is now the chief prosecutor after his father's sudden death. Fernand has inherited his father's estate, and Mercedes has married Fernand. All of his targets for revenge are part of Parisian high society. Edmund leaves some gold for the financially struggling Morel and sets sail with Jacopo to the island of Monte Cristo, where they discover unimaginable wealth. However, instead of retiring, Edmund's new purpose in life is to seek revenge on Fernand, Danglars, Mercedes, and Villefort. To gain access to them, he must reinvent himself, so he uses his wealth to purchase a grand estate near Paris and declares himself the Count of Monte Cristo. Despite being unknown to society, his vast riches and status as a count cause a stir among the elite aristocracy. The count arranges a grand party at his new estate and extends an invitation to numerous members of high society in Paris, including all of his targets for revenge. With significant access to each of them, he sets about sabotaging them one by one, causing them to suffer and fail. The Count gets close to Fernand and Mercedes by paying Vampa to orchestrate the kidnapping of their son, Albert. This allows the Count to rescue Albert himself and gain entry to the home of Fernand and Mercedes as a welcome guest. Edmund continues to apply pressure to Fernand's financial situation, forcing him to turn to Danglars and Villefort out of desperation. During this time, Albert mentions to Fernand that the Count had spoken of a Spada shipment in gold, leading Fernand and Villefort to believe that the Count has discovered Spada's hidden treasure and that the next shipment is on its way. Fernand, Villefort, and Danglars plan to seize the treasure using Villefort's legal power to legitimize the theft, but they fall into Edmund's trap and are caught in the act. Danglars is arrested while trying to unload the shipment. Mercedes eventually realizes that the Count is actually Edmond Dantes, as she observes his behavior closely. However, Edmund still harbors a strong grudge against Mercedes for marrying Fernand soon after his imprisonment and having Fernand's son, Albert, shortly thereafter. His hatred for Mercedes leads him to keep her at a distance, even though she insists that he is Edmund. The Count eventually discovers that Villefort had declared him dead shortly after he was imprisoned, and that Fernand had arranged this in order to win over Mercedes. Fernand had also murdered Villefort's father at Villefort's request to obtain this declaration. Villefort is caught admitting this to the authority and is subsequently arrested. After accidentally revealing information in a confrontation with Mercedes at his home, he admits to his true identity, what had happened to him, and angrily chastises Mercedes for marrying the man that had put him away. She reveals her string wedding ring, showcasing her devotion to him after all of these years, and they begin their love again. Fernand's financial ruin, stemming from his own gambling issues and ill-advised business ventures that were sabotaged by Edmund's clandestine manipulations, prompts him to flee Paris to elude his creditors and the authorities, who charged him with multiple offenses revealed by Villefort's admission. Reluctant to accompany Fernand with their child, Mercedes eventually reveals to Fernand that Albert is, in fact, Edmund's son, as he was conceived prior to Edmund's imprisonment. With his life crumbling around him, Fernand abandons Mercedes and his offspring. Fernand goes to where he thinks the treasure is, but he finds out that there's only one chest with a chess piece in it. This chess piece is something that he and Edmund used to share when they were younger. Edmund appears and tells Fernand that he knows everything and confronts him about what he did. Albert, who knows where Fernand went, tries to protect his father from the Count because he thinks the Count is a traitor who stole Mercedes away from their family. Edmund tells Albert that he will kill him if he tries to stop his revenge plan, but Mercedes comes in before the fight can end and reveals that Edmund is actually Albert's father. Albert is shocked to learn this and also that Fernand was willing to let him fight his own biological father to save himself. Fernand takes advantage of Albert's shock and threatens to shoot him to escape. Edmund begs Fernand to spare Albert's life and promises to give up his revenge plan if he does. Jacopo throws a knife at Fernand and wounds him, but Fernand's gun goes off and accidentally wounds Mercedes. Albert, Jacopo, and Edmund take care of Mercedes, while Fernand rides away and realizes that he has lost everything. With no wealth, status, family, or innocence, he demands that Edmund face him. Jacopo tells Edmund that confronting Fernand is the only way to end this situation, and even Feria would understand. Fernand admits that he could never live in a world where Edmund, a clerk's son, had everything he wanted. They fight violently, and the fight ends with Edmund killing Fernand. Sometime later, Edmund goes back to the Shadow Diff, the prison where he was once held. He buys it and talks to Feria, who is no longer alive, about how seeking revenge only brought him misery. He decides to return to a life with his family and faith. He thinks about destroying the prison, but changes his mind and keeps it as a reminder of his past. Mercedes, Albert, and Jacopo come with him to the island. Edmund promises to take care of them as they leave the island together. This concludes the story. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe if you would like to see more videos like this.